But here's the direction I'm thinking about going with this, Jeff. I think just a favorite chip and dip combo could obviously, that's obviously the normal question there. But I'm thinking about making a trio. You got to have a trio of dips that you pick, and you pick your top three, and then maybe a couple different chips to go with them.
Okay.
So that's that. You might need some time for that one, but it's also game planning it for the guests as well, because that's I feel like there's a lot of options with dips, and I'm curious what people are going to say with the dip question, because I mean, you got like guacamole is very popular. It feels like queso is in every restaurant known to man now. We all want queso. We want to fill our buckets up with queso and just run around with queso. I don't know why there's so much queso around, but I like the French onion dip. That's, okay. I think, a lower key one that you don't see as much, but I get excited when I see that on the menu. A dried beef dip, very underrated.
Yes, very underrated.
Our friends at Sobeys have a very good dried beef dip. A little plug for them since they're a station sponsor. I like their dried beef dip, and I think they have a French onion dip too. But they have a good beer cheese dip, so like a beer cheese horseradish cheese dip. I feel like these are all ones that could be in the running for me, but I'm curious if you've got a few. Obviously you got salsa.
Yeah, salsa's the easy way out.
Yeah.
Salsa and chips. Although that's got to be close to my number one. I am a guacamole chip guy as well, but I have a recipe for the spicy Italian sausage dip. And
that sounds good.
Absolutely amazing. In fact, I'll make a whole 9x13 pan of it, and it'll last me a week and a half. And I get my sausage at Sobe Meats.
There we go, another plug for them.
My spicy and my regular Italian sausage, and theirs is the best.
I don't think I can plug them enough, because I really do shop at Sobeys most of the time. I live on that side of town. I get pretty much all of my meat there, and it is very good. You're missing out if you're not getting your meat from Sobeys.
It's my Friday after work or Saturday morning. That's where I'm going, and it's my meats, beef sticks for the week.
Yep.
Throwing my lunches. Oh, yeah. Can't go wrong.
Yeah. Well, I didn't intend for this to become a Sobe plug, but I'm also not mad about it because they are a station sponsor and partner, so we're happy about that. So we'll brainstorm on the chips and dip. I'm looking at these people that are coming. These will be good people to ask about chips and dip. We got Chris Brown from the Tigers Minor League Report. Jeff was just lamenting that we're not really hearing a lot of baseball coverage for baseball starting kind of this week. So he just got back from Lakeland with the Minor League Report crew and wrote a good article actually in the Detroit Free Press. So he's gone big time here, and we'll talk to him about the prospects that he saw down there and what he thinks headed into the season. Jordan Orth of the Hockey Writers, the Red Wings had a huge week.
Yeah, they did.
And he kind of profiled that week for the Hockey Writers. So now we'll get his kind of back end review of it. And then Chad Bush over at the Motor City Cruise. They've got a good team. I don't know if you follow the Cruise at all, Jeff, because there's only so much bandwidth you can have, but they've actually become one of the favorites on the G League side of things.
Okay.
They made kind of a mid-season trade for Drew Peterson on the G League side of things, and that's a good team. But we'll also talk some more Danish Jenkins with him, because he's our resident Danish Jenkins expert. He watched him for about 2 years down in the G League, and now we'll be seeing more Danish with the Cade injury here. But I'm curious if you've been catching the tournament. We got to update the tournament a little bit, because we've got a lot of Big Ten teams still in there. So a lot of the teams that we saw at the Big Ten tournament, Mom and I, are still hanging in there. So I'm happy about that.
It's fantastic.
I thought this would be a good year for the Big Ten. I feel like they're always kind of flying under the radar a little bit, and this year's kind of become their year, especially capped by that Iowa win.
Yeah, 6 in the Sweet 16. It's a record for the Big Ten. It's fantastic. That unfortunately and fortunately, because Iowa and Nebraska are going to play in their Sweet 16 game, And I didn't realize they hated each other as much as everyone's been talking about. Like, they do not like each other.
I only know that because I've met a few people from those states, and it's like they don't really have a lot of other things to be rivals about or with. They're kind of in the middle of nowhere, so it's like, who else are they going to have a rivalry with? We're both stuck out in the middle of the plains here, and I think that's why. I think it's more like by default, because Illinois has a weird rivalry like that too. I don't know if it's Wisconsin. I got right into the middle of that one time where I was like, this is pretty heated. This is like Michigan State or Ohio State here. So that is a pretty good matchup too in general. Nebraska,
is going to be a
Iowa,
great game.
And you got a guaranteed team in the Elite Eight then from the Big Ten. Hopefully some more. Hopefully Michigan should advance. They've got a pretty good bracket overall. When their bracket came out, I thought, okay, this is going to be a pretty good one to potentially run the table and get through somewhat unscathed. They look like they're rolling. The Michigan State bracket, however, is like it just everywhere you turn. I mean, especially with the 4 teams that are left. Duke hasn't even been playing well yet, which kind of makes me feel better, but also makes me a little bit worried. St. John's is good for where they are, and then UConn's going to be a tough next matchup. That's going to be a bit of a gauntlet for Michigan State to get out of. But they have been hitting from the outside, and whenever we've talked with some of the Spartans folks, that's been kind of the key. If they're hitting from 3, then they can stay in any game.
Yeah, their first game when they were hitting the outside shot, I was like, this is how dangerous they can be. But, it's been so inconsistent, not only this season, but the last few seasons. But Michigan State and Michigan have both played really, really well. And Alabama, all they do is launch threes. I mean, they made 11 in the first half or something like that. And that was Michigan's weakness, defending the perimeter, but not in the tournament, not so far. So it's Michigan's, and if they keep playing the way they are, I think they're 10.5. I think it's 10.5 right now over Alabama, which I think is kind of high, but very excited. I only missed 2 games the whole weekend, and it was the 2 late games last night. That's because I have to get up so early Monday morning. But
that's impressive that you got all the other games, and those games were nothing to write home about, if I remember correctly.
No,
I think they were both blowouts.
Yeah, they were both pretty bad. So no, I have the 4 boxes on my TV so I can watch 4 different games, and oh yeah, me and my son were locked and loaded this weekend.
Well, I love the quad box because it's like you're taking in so much that you don't even really remember anything. It's like, well, what was the score of any of those games? I don't know. What sport was it? I think it was basketball.
Right.
I think I saw them dribbling as opposed to
sports.
Yeah.
Sports.
Yeah, I love it, but that's kind of how, because when I do that's especially true on Sundays when I do the quad box with the NFL, and then if I dare to put Red Zone as one of the boxes, then it's like I don't remember anything that I did that day. It's just, and then Red Zone will go into because they have like an octabox that they can go into, so I can potentially have 11 boxes on my screen at once.
And this tournament's so dangerous too, because it's like you wake up, you get ready, and you're like, it's like 2:30, 3 o'clock. It's halftime of the first game. You're like, oh my gosh, I didn't brush my teeth yet. Oh my gosh, I'm still in my pajamas. Oh, it's stuff like that. And then you're like, oh man. And then the weekend's gone, and it's like, all right, back to work.
I was going to say, yeah, then you're like, wait, what game am I on? Oh, it's Monday. Right, I'm actually supposed to be at work now. I'm not even supposed to be watching a game. This is a rerun from 3 years ago. I didn't even know this was on the TV. Yeah, I had to keep up on the other games, too, because obviously we cover mostly the Detroit sports. So I was kind of intermingling those, like the Red Wings game on Saturday. I had to keep up with all 3 of those games.
I had it in the box.
Pistons. Yeah, it was nice that you could put it in the box.
That's right, I had it in the box.
Because that's the one weakness of the boxes is they're so split out that you can't put like anything that's local Detroit typically in there unless it is on ESPN or one of the major carriers. You can't necessarily throw it in that box. But I always say this when we talk about cable. Be nice if everything was all in the same place,
right, right.
That'd be nice. That we didn't want that. We wanted it to be all split out. Now it's everywhere, and it's chaos. But it is fun. Yeah, the first the first weekend here was, I think, a big payoff for the NCAA tournament. Good start, and hopefully we get a few teams in the Elite Eight and the Final Four from the Big Ten. But yeah, Michigan and Michigan State still hanging strong, and Purdue, who we actually interviewed somebody that played with Matt Painter last week. He was a local guy, and because Purdue's another team that's just quietly played very well. They won the Big Ten tournament, obviously, and they continue to play well in the NCAA tournament here. Everybody's playing their roles very well, and with Braden Smith at the helm, I think that's another team to watch out for. I don't think they're scared of a matchup with Arizona at the end of next weekend, if that's what it ends up being.
It's really amazing what this NIL has done, because you remember in football it was SEC. That's it. SEC. Basketball, ACC, and now the Big Ten's won the last 3 national championships in college football, and they look really good in this basketball tournament.
And the irony is that a few of these teams in the Big Ten are very hesitant to use the NIL stuff. Purdue is notorious for that, and Michigan State is notorious for that. They'll have a pickup here and there. Clough was their one pickup from Purdue, I think, that is factoring in. Michigan State usually has one guy a year that it's like Izzo puts his own restrictions on. I'm not really sure why. I think he wants to retain that chemistry on the team. And I mean, he's got to have, of the major conference teams, he's got to have one of the best rates for having seniors that actually play on his team. They don't transfer away very often, and they're not ones that have just come over for 1 year. I think they've got Trey Fort. I think that's basically it for this team this year. So yeah, they do it the right way, the old school way. I'm putting that in quotes. There's nothing wrong with doing it the way Michigan is doing it, and there's a reason that they got good all of a sudden very quickly, because they started going after all these guys. I mean, think of Yaxel Lendenberg, who was kind of buried at UAB, and then all of a sudden he goes over to Michigan and becomes Big Ten Player of the Year, and that was a transfer portal NIL guy. A lot
of people don't know he was in junior college. He started at a junior college, then went up to UAB, and then Dusty May, he wanted to come play for Dusty May. So Dusty May has a lot to do with this. Well, it's NIL, but Dusty May, there's kids that want to play for Dusty May.
And they're going to continue to get that, I feel like, because, I mean, yeah, it was Lendenberg this year and Mara. Morris Johnson moved over from a different Big Ten team. That was kind of a surprise, but they have a lot of big guys on Illinois, another team that's kind of under the radar in the grand scheme of things. But I can't believe how he's able to identify this talent and that it's actually available. Like Mara he can't exactly go under the radar at his size, but they were able to get him. Lendenberg, same thing, and Danny Wolf was that case, and Golden last year. Those big guys really weren't doing much of anything. I mean, they were okay, but he gave them the platform at Michigan. So that's gonna, if you're a big guy that has some versatility, I feel like that's one of the first places you want to go, because he's been able to make a lot of that here. But yeah, it should be fun. We got more tournament as we go here, and I'm sure we'll be talking about it more on the show. We may even we'll have to see how Jeff feels for the last segment, what we want to talk about. We intentionally didn't talk any football that segment here, because there's been enough of that. They had a very good show last Thursday talking about it, and then we've got our Thursday show. But maybe we'll have more of our thoughts on the actual covering of football rather than football. But we're going to kick off with baseball, as we should, because we've got baseball coming up starting this week. So we've got Chris Brown of the Tigers Minor League Report, who will come on and give us his thoughts after seeing spring training firsthand. So stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. Having a bit of a glow up here. He was featured in the Detroit Free Press. I read that article. Tigers Minor League Report is very hot. They just came back from Lakeland. I saw them hanging out with Greg Gagne down there and saw pictures. So we're going to start with in the obvious spot here, Chris Brown. It's National Chips and Dip Day. So what if Chris Brown's putting together a trio of dips? What dips is he choosing, and what chips are we putting with it?
Oh, interesting. All right. Well, let me ask you this. Is nacho cheese considered a dip?
I think it has to be, because I was talking about you're hitting on the exact thing that I was talking about in the first segment, that there's such a prevalence of queso. That's basically queso now. Nacho cheese is queso, I think. It's in the queso category.
That's certainly one of my favorites, and it's something I always get, or I used to always get when I would go to the ballpark, is just ballpark nachos. So if that counts, that's be up there. If not, I'm kind of basic. I'll get like a French onion dip and some Ruffles, like the ridged Ruffles, and I enjoy that. And after that, I don't know, if we're doing queso, then I guess we could also put guacamole on there.
We covered all three of those. French onion is the random one there, because I don't think that's as popular, but I picked that as one of mine in the first segment. I feel like that's a classic one.
Yeah, it's what we have at the Brown household.
Perfect. I'm glad it's staying alive here, but no, we like to celebrate the thing of the day, but I am excited to talk to you here, because you just came back from Lakeland. I'm excited to hear what happened there and your thoughts on a bunch of things there. We got to talk the top 50 a little bit, or 50 with an asterisk, whatever the number is. I'm not going to focus on the number this year. I did that too much last year, and then, I was impressed to see that you had an article in the Detroit Free Press. So I'm curious how that came about.
Well, I appreciate that. Well, yeah, I mean, I do a podcast with the Free Press Tigers beat writer, Evan Petzold, and we just he asked me if I could do it since I was going to be at the game anyway. And I think, he had to do a Tigers game story earlier in the day. And so I said, sure, I'd be happy to do that. And so they gave me the opportunity, and it was pretty fun. I just, I kind of did what I would normally do with our website, and then it just went to some editors, and they cleaned it up. So, but yeah, it was very cool. My parents were, they went out and bought a copy of the paper, so they have a physical copy.
That's awesome.
But yeah, it was a fun experience to be at the game, and also to be able to write about it.
Nice. Yeah, it was a good article. I read it, and I'm an avid reader of the Tigers minor league report, so I'm used to your writing anyways, but I'm glad that gave some notoriety to you guys too, because I know the minor league report has been on the rise, but as it should be. I think people are kind of writing it off unnecessarily. Okay, well, it's the minor leagues, though. I want to be concerned with the major leagues. Well, this is all becoming the major leagues. You guys get to see the future kind of thing with the minor league report. So I'm curious what you saw out of there. Obviously, were a lot of prospects from your list, from the top 50 list at spring training. So I'd like to kind of start with those, with the guy that weirdly wasn't really talked about as much as I thought he would be. It's like in other camps, it's like you go to the Pittsburgh camp and all you were hearing is Connor Griffin. I don't think we were hearing that as much with Kevin McGonigal here, and I've wondered why, if it's his personality more so, or what's happening there. But they're kind of on similar trajectories, but maybe not similar teams as well, because obviously Pittsburgh isn't really in a similar spot to Detroit right now.
Yeah, I think that there's still a lot of excitement about Kevin McGonigal, and we actually, when we go around and people will talk to us and ask us if we think he's making the team. So there's certainly some hype there. Him not being in the Futures game, I think, was a disappointment to some fans, certainly, but I actually think to like Major League Baseball. They wanted to build that as, number one prospect versus number two prospect. And the Tigers, they want McGonigal to make the big league team, I think, or certainly they want to give him every chance to. We'll see what happens. But yeah, so he wasn't there at the spring breakout, but he was busy doing good stuff in Lakeland and in Clearwater, making great double plays. He had a couple hits. So, I think he's about as good as it gets, and about as good of a player as we've ever seen since we've been covering this. So, he didn't get as much talk, but he might be talking from the big league soon.
Well, yeah. What are your thoughts on that? Because you've probably seen more baseball from him than 99% of the market here, with watching as much minor leagues as you do. And obviously he's had a quick ascent, but he also seems like the classic kind of MLB ready style talent. He flashed some defensive prowess that could have been a weakness, but you talked about how he made some plays at the major league level. He's got a bat that seems very ready. I mean, I would be, if he got inserted into the lineup, I would be more confident in the steadiness of his bat than some of the people that are more senior to him, because there's still a lot of young guys on this team and there are a lot of ups and downs on this team, but he seems like he'll be able to handle the mental part of the game. So then that kind of then begs the question, okay, what are we considering? Is it a time issue with getting them up and then the contract, or because they do have a bit of a hole there that it seems like he would fill both on the hitting side and where he would slot in the field?
Yeah, heading into this spring training, the big question for me was going to be the defense, and I've seen him play, probably 20 games in person or so, and dozens more on TV, and it seemed like each time he climbed up a level, from Lakeland to West Michigan and from West Michigan to Erie, he kind of allowed the game to speed up on him a little bit on defense. There would be a couple errors in the first few games, and then he would clean it up and be fine. But he's taken his defense to another level this year to where I'm not really concerned about it at all. So that took away the big question for me, and now it's just a matter of he's going to struggle a little bit in terms of just hitting for average, because you're going to be seeing the best pitching on the planet day in, day out. And, you see a guy twice and then they'll bring in an army of relievers who throw 100 with good breaking balls. It's a big leap. And I think he's equipped to handle it, but it's just a matter of if the Tigers think what he needs to learn, he can learn in Toledo, or does he have to learn it in the big leagues? And I think he has to learn it in the big leagues, because he still has the sort of plus eye. He's going to take his walks no matter what. He's shown impressive power. And so it's just a matter of him figuring out the kind of, batting average side of the things. And I think to do that, to be able to hit big leaguers, you got to face big leaguers. And so I would put him on the opening day roster, slot him in at shortstop, play him at some third, and then profit, I guess you would say.
Exactly. I just don't know what more we can learn from having him down at the minor league level. We know he's on the right trajectory. If the defense is checking out and it's kind of a position of need, you then are able to be more flexible with some of the pieces that might play on the left side of that infield. Javi Baez, Zach McKinstry, you can move those guys around and keep them in the utility role that makes them a little bit more valuable, and then play the matchups a little bit more, which obviously Hinch is prone to do. So I don't know. I feel like it would give some good juice for the major league level, but your opinion's a lot more valuable than mine. I think Jeff's got something for you here, though.
Isn't there something in his contract, though, too, that we keep the rights for another year if we don't bring him up till May? Is there something like that I heard?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that teams have done in the past. Chris Bryant was kind of an infamous case where to get a full year of Major League Baseball service time, you have to play a certain number of days with the big league club. It's like 172. The season is 187 days long. So if you wait 3 weeks, then a player could play basically the full season and not get a full year of service time. So instead of having them for 6 years, you have them for 7 years. And that's what teams have done that in the past to kind of game the system, get an extra year. And one of the things that baseball did in the last collective bargaining agreement was to try to stop teams from doing that. They would basically, if a player comes up, and even if he doesn't get a traditional full year of service time, but he goes on to win Rookie of the Year, they give him a full year anyway. So that's what happened with Paul Skeens in Pittsburgh. They brought him up, I don't know, late May, early June, and then he was so good that he won the Rookie of the Year. And so he got a full year of service time, and Pittsburgh did not get. They've also added in compensation. If you bring a player up on opening day as a rookie and he wins an award, wins Rookie of the Year the first year, or as a top 3 finalist for MVP in any of the first 3 years, you get an extra draft pick. So they're trying to keep teams from doing that. At the same time, it still does make a lot of sense to if you can kind of game the system a little bit and get an extra year of team control out of a guy. But it feels kind of cheap, and it's the smart thing to do, but I don't know. As a Tigers fan, I would hope that they just bring up the guy that they think can help them.
Well, and I know Brandon Day, our friend Brandon Day at Bless You Boys, when we had this conversation a little earlier in the offseason, he was talking about how he thought that it would kind of depend on that service time then maybe leading to a contract and saying, okay, kind of handling it similar to the way they did Colt Keith, that they just get him locked in, which I wouldn't be opposed to either. I kind of like that early signing idea. I know you're taking some risk that he is going to develop the way that you think he is, but also with a guy like this, if you wait and you wait till he's one of the top guys in the league, then you're risking a much higher payday. So that was kind of his caveat, that he thought as long as they were able to get him under contract, that might be what keeps him up at the major league level.
Yeah, I mean, that would be an ideal scenario. There's we're kind of getting into the contract nerdery here, but there's when they did that with Colt Keith, for whatever reason, if you sign a player to that sort of an extension before he plays in the big leagues, then he's no longer eligible to get that draft pick that I was telling you about. I don't know why, but that's part of the rules. So what teams can do is basically agree to the framework of a deal like that, have a kid play for a handful of games in the big leagues, and then sign him to the extension. And then you have them, you get that long-term deal at a potentially, cheaper price, and you still can get the draft pick. But of course, any of that has to, the player has to agree to it. And there's just, there's no guarantee that McGonigal wants to do that. He may believe in himself strongly and want to get to free agency. We don't really know.
Well, we love contract nerdery here.
Unfortunately, you're talking to two nerds who love to talk about that. Yeah.
So
Jeff and I smiled at each other when you said that, because we were just lamenting that some sports radio formats have a tendency to maybe go a little bit derivative. We don't like to do that here anyway. So no, we'll have more nerdery here with Chris Brown after the break. I like that word, Chris. Stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. Wait, Chris, so we have a question for you. I think I'm going to let Jeff ask it, but this has been something that's been on the people's minds. Now we're going to switch from contract nerdery to media nerdery, I guess. It's funny to me with the Tigers. They are headed into a season, that they're going to be one of the favorites. I haven't looked at the odds lately, but they're a favored team within the major leagues here. They're looking like a team that may have a chance, one of the 8 teams or so that may have a chance to get to the World Series. But how do we not know how to watch them? Jeff, what do you got on that? We can't find them.
I did read this morning that there's still could be some people that could not see them on opening day if they don't get the rest of whatever needs to be done. Is it with the cable packages or the satellite, or I can't remember which one it was.
Yeah, it's a complex situation. I just saw that Ben Fiddleman, who was part of their communications team, just tweeted out the latest information about what people need to do to see the games. It's weird. This is part of the reason why teams have always used, or at least in the last few decades, have always used a third-party cable provider, because figuring all this stuff out is more complicated and costly than most teams want to deal with. And you have the other teams that have their own TV network, and that would be ideal. But I'm sure they're going to figure out a way for people to see the games. It's just I don't know about if they've disseminated the information in a way that is particularly helpful. Sometimes maybe people just have to use a bootleg stream.
Well, I'm imagining people getting up on their TVs and then having the old antenna and then trying to manipulate them to get the games here. You were hanging out with Greg Gagne, so I thought maybe you'd have inside information for us here. I don't know if he even knows how to get the games, and he'll be doing them at least from Erie there.
Well, yeah. Well, the the guys who announce the games don't have to worry about how to watch them on TV because they're there. So, but yeah, no. Greg is now officially fully with the Tigers. He's the third member of the broadcast. So it was cool to see, and him get. He's going to be out in San Diego, I believe.
Nice. Okay. Call. So is he doing any in Erie? He's not the flex guy going up from Erie. He's just going to be that basically part of the team and serve a similar role. That when Benetti goes to major TV, national TV, then Dickerson goes to the main Tigers TV spot, wherever that is, and then Greg's on the radio.
Yep, that's the plan. And then Erie now has Zach Serdinik, who was the announcer for the Lakeland Flying Tigers last year. And we were down in Lakeland for the last 4 or 5 days, and we still couldn't figure out who's going to be the announcer for Lakeland this year. So a lot of things still seem to be up in the air.
I'm okay. So this is making a lot of things come together then for me here, Chris, because as soon as you said that, I thought I'll bet that Zach became the Erie announcer in my head, because we had Zach on the show, I think like a day or two before he was able to announce this, because we were going to discuss Spartans, since he does some work as the Spartans host as well for basketball. And I had it on the list to discuss baseball as well. And he said, hey, I can't do baseball right now because we got some things in the works. And I said, okay, no problem. We got plenty to do on the basketball side. But that makes sense that they're moving him up, because he's a rising star in the business himself. He's a friend of the show, and we've had him on the show several times.
Yeah, we met Zach when he got that gig last year. He came on our show, and we interact a lot. When we do your tweets of the highlights, we like to tag the announcers most of the time. And so we're happy for him. And we ran into our buddy Dan Hasty down in Lakeland, the announcer for West Michigan. So yeah, it was kind of fun in that aspect. You see a lot of these players you want to see, but then we also see Dan Dickerson, we see Gagne, we see Hasty. It's a good time.
I tell these guys this all the time when they come on the show, whether it's Greg or Zach or Zach Linfield, who does the PA stuff for the Tigers. They're all friends of the show, but that's a very good unit there. And I know you guys, because you guys were even in the booth with Greg at one point, right, in Erie?
Yeah, they've had us in several times. It's really awesome, and we appreciate that. They Raj has had a chance to go in there for a few innings. He was there when Gage Workman stole or broke the Eastern League record the Seawolves career record for stolen bases and pulled the bag over his head like Ricky Henderson. And they allowed me to be in the booth for an inning during the Moon Mammoths game, which was really fun. So those guys have been great to us, and we're grateful for all of it.
Yeah, it's always fun when you guys are able to do that. Yeah, can you cover for Zach in Lakeland? You've got a good voice, Chris. Can you do that along with everything else you do?
Well, it's funny. I've thought about trying to do play-by-play before, and I just don't think, my brain doesn't think that quickly. I was one of the very first times I got to do that was with Dan Hasty. He invited me into the booth as the visiting announcer in Lansing, and Gage Workman again. He made this incredible spinning, diving stop, spinning throw to first at shortstop, and all I could say was "Whoa!" So I don't know if I'm great for providing much depth there.
That's where you go with the major league quote, dynamite drop in there, Chris, like Bob Uecker says to his partner. Yeah, that's it is tough. I mean, that's the thing about when you do have somebody that's just used to covering baseball in a different way or what have you. It's a special skill, but because they're so fluid at it, nobody really looks at it as a skill, because it's like, well, yeah, they're good at talking. Yeah, but it takes a certain timing in your brain and being able to come up with that stuff so quickly and be eloquent and not pause. So yeah, I'm glad we covered that. But I do, since we have you on here who does cover a lot of the minor league stuff and the prospects so well, I'm curious who else caught your eye. Obviously we covered McGonigal a little bit, but I'm sure you were watching everybody, not just the prospects, but who in Lakeland do you kind of have your eye on, either whether they're going to start in the minor leagues or on the major league roster here?
Oh yeah, I mean there was a lot. We not just in the spring training game, but we were able to go to the backfields and see a lot of the younger guys, and we were excited by a lot of that. But just seeing Bryce Rayner back on the field at the spring breakout was really nice to see, and he continues to be he hits the ball really hard on line drives, got an RBI. That was cool. And seeing the draft picks from last year, Jordan Yost, the shortstop, and Michael Oliveto, the catcher, was our first real chance to look at them. Oliveto really does have a beautiful swing. Yost looks like he's going to be a good hitter and a good fielder. And then we got to see Chris Rodriguez, the $3 million plus international bonus baby they had, who's I don't even know if he's 18 yet. But yeah, he looks impressive. But and in the backfields, it was a lot about the pitching. We got to see one of the guys we've been really high on is a kid named Lucas Ellisalt, who came up to West Michigan about halfway through last year. And as a pitcher, he kind of does everything you want. He throws strikes. He's got a really good breaking ball. He has command of all his pitches. He just didn't throw quite hard enough. I think he was about 89 to 91. But this spring, he was sitting around 93 miles an hour and up to 95. So that he might have a real big breakout this year if he can keep throwing strikes the way he did last year. That was fun to see. We got to see Caleb Lays, a left-handed starting pitcher from that they drafted last year. He looked pretty good. And then one of my personal favorites is a kid named Yonan Koba, who is we spotted him watching the Tigers Dominican Summer League feed last year, and he's this small athletic guy who's got three really interesting pitches. And this was his first time in the United States, and he's I think 19, and so it was fun watching him pitch live batting practice to the guys in the backfield. So that's like the super deep cuts there. I think guys that at higher levels, we sort of continue to see them throughout spring. You've seen pretty solid performances from John Peck and Max Anderson and Trey Cruz, and those are guys that they're kind of getting rewarded by going out to Arizona for these last spring training games, even though they're probably not going to make the team.
Yeah, Peck has been very good. He's been very solid. Yeah.
That's a name I feel like was kind of bandied about early from not only I get most of that coverage from the Tigers minor league report, but I was seeing that elsewhere. And usually that means that minor league report was on it like 15 months ago. And it is funny when I do see a name, I'm like, I haven't really heard this name before. And then I'll look in your guys' archives. I'm like, they covered in 2023. They're on top of it. But that's cool that you were able to see all those all the young guys there and see some of the development. Man, you described that picking up the velocity a little bit and a couple more miles per hour on the pitches. That to me is kind of like the equivalent of when a basketball player gets added height after their game is kind of settled, like an Anthony Davis effect, or it even happened to Giannis, where they're playing more like a guard and they have to play a certain way, and then all of a sudden they're now a big guy but with guard skills. That's kind of similar to when these guys have settled into, okay, I have to pitch a certain way because I don't have the velocity on my top end pitch here, and then when you are able to increase that velocity, it does change the game for them.
Yeah, man, that's a great comparison right there. I like that a lot. And that reminds me, another one that happened to is a guy named Joe Miller, who was another pitcher who was in West Michigan plenty last year, and we kind of just viewed him as what you would say is like an organizational arm, somebody that they would send around the system, and he could give you a couple innings, but not really a prospect, because he's a lefty, and he was again around 91 miles an hour. He did touch 94 like once or twice last year. But then in the spring breakout game, he was sitting at 94, and he got up to 96. And suddenly it was like, wow, this is a guy. He has four other pitches. He got swings and misses with all of them. At one point, he struck out 5 people in a row. It was really eye-opening performance. So he's a guy we're going to keep an eye on very closely this year, because sometimes these prospects just come from out of nowhere.
It is amazing that with the amount of coverage that's out there, the amount of tape, the outfits like you guys where you're able to see all of this stuff. Yeah, you can't see people that aren't there or are late acquisitions or are coming from different leagues, but it is amazing with the growth in the system and the fact that there is all this tape out there, that there's still a lot of gems that are not necessarily on the surface there. So make sure to tell people where they can follow you here, because it is great coverage. I can't recommend it enough, and there's a lot of great writers that are part of it. We had Rogelio on our other show when I covered the Sports Project. He was on that show, but we'll be cycling through the Tigers minor league report guys as the season progresses here.
Yeah, thank you. We have our website is Tigers Minor League Report. We have a Patreon where we put some stuff behind the paywall that is more, devious intel. And then we have Twitter accounts, Rogcast Baseball. I'm at Chris Brown 0914, but you probably would just want to follow Tigers ML Report at Twitter. And then we do our podcasts. We'll have the Minor Leaguer podcast later tonight. And then I do, as I said earlier, the Days of Roar podcast with Evan Petzold. So lots of different places to find us, and I really appreciate you having me on.
Definitely. We'll have you on again as the season progresses here, because we'll be doing Tigers pretty much every week from here on out for the rest of the season. So glad we could kick off the coverage with you here, Chris, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Sounds good. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Chris Brown. Appreciate him coming on. Great stuff as always. And
really good stuff.
yeah, we now maybe we can find the games, Jeff. I don't know.
Yeah.
We're just going to have to call since Greg Gagne's on the call now. I'm just going to call him and have him put me on speakerphone for the game.
My thought was now in the day and age we're living, what if we did a drone over the stadium and with a video feed through it?
This is a good idea. That's smart. That's well over my head. Not only with the drone, but just the idea in general. But we got a lot of brainstorming happening here, and I like it. So we're going to turn our attention to hockey after the break. We've got Jordan Orth of the Hockey Writers coming on to talk about the big week that the Red Wings had here last week. So stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. He's a friend of the show. Does a great job covering the Red Wings for us. And there's a lot of Red Wings to cover. Jeff and I were talking about this as the show was going on air, how the Red Wings seem to be getting lost in the shuffle, and I don't really care for that. We try to give them equal coverage on our show, especially since we have a lot of great folks like Jordan on to cover them, and they've been through a period where, I mean, they're basically playing playoff hockey at this point in time. But Jordan, as you know from being on the show before, we like to celebrate the thing of the day on the show, and it's Chips and Dip Day. So I'm curious, if you were to put together a chips and dip combo with 3 dips and some chips with it, what are the three dips you're choosing?
Kind of basic. We do mango salsa. We've got queso and just regular salsa. Kind of plain Jane.
I mean, I don't know if we can call mango salsa basic. I feel like that's a good one. That's a very solid answer, and it fits in with the trio of kind of the Mexican ones. And you also didn't say queso, which I feel like we've been drowning in queso just as an American society.
Yes. Yep.
But no, we appreciate you playing along with that. But we got to talk some puck with you here, because you did a good job previewing this week here for the Red Wings, talking about how it was going to be a pivotal week. There's obviously been a lot of movement. You've got the trade deadline acquisitions, but then essentially right after they got those guys in the fold, then they lost a couple key players. They're trying to get those guys back. Obviously Larkin's a key loss, and they've got Kopp back in the mix now. But this was a really interesting week. I like watching all the Detroit sports, but this one is the most intensified right now. The level of hockey being played right now, it can only basically be called playoff hockey at this point. It's just so intense every night. It doesn't matter where they're playing, who they're playing against. I know that it's been also teams in the playoff hunt, but these have been some good games lately.
Yeah, you're spot on. I mean, like you said, at this point it is playoff hockey. You're right in the thick of trying to get that playoff spot to end the drought. You look at just the intensity in the last 2 games alone. You watch the Montreal game, the atmosphere, the energy, the play on the ice. It felt like an original 6 playoff series, and it was no different against Boston. I mean, they ended up losing, yes, but at the same time, you throw 42 shots at our goalie. I mean, you caught a goalie at the wrong time. Swayman played lights out against them, but yeah, you're do or die right now, basically, with how tight the entire Metro division, or the Atlantic division, is, and then the wild card. Like you said, it is 100% playoff hockey right now for not just the Wings, but all the teams around them too.
It's been fun. I know this hasn't been an ideal time for the numbers to kind of level out here, because we talked about this on, I think, the last show in the last Red Wings segment. But I know that people, are lamenting the injuries, but I think the Wings were by far the lowest team as far as games missed to injury across the league, or they were in the bottom 3 or 5, something like that. So it's obviously a huge loss with Larkin. But I was asking somebody this last week. I'd be curious of your opinion on this, Jordan, because Larkin's an obvious top loss, that other than maybe losing Gibson, or you got your Sider is probably in this category, but there's a couple clear ones that if you have that loss, they're guys that are pivotal to the team and the way it runs. Larkin with his leadership, scoring, all the things he provides is an obvious one, but I think Kopp is in that next tier, and they don't necessarily, he wouldn't be the obvious next one in the rankings, but I do think he was a pretty pivotal loss, and I think he kind of showed that when he came back, because they've been playing differently. We've seen two different versions, one without Larkin and Kopp, and now one without just Larkin, and they are playing differently with Kopp back.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, you don't think of someone like Kopp to be a big difference maker in the lineup, but you take him out, then for one, you're shuffling guys around that, they're either playing on the wing or playing on center that might not be used to it, or playing in a role that's a little bit different. And I mean, he brings you got a lot of veteran experience on the team, but he brings a different aspect to it, whether it's at the face-off circle or penalty kill. I mean, he's one of those guys that he's not a superstar, but he's almost like a glue type of player that you need someone like him on the ice to make that difference on the penalty kill or in the corners battling for the puck, out in front, taking beatings for screens or tips. I mean, like you said, he was a difference maker. He has been all season in his certain role. And when you take him out of that role, like you said, it definitely is noticeable. And he's had a really good season in my mind for all the grief he had caught the last couple seasons with not living up to some fans' expectations with the contract he got.
I do think he's been underrated as well. This isn't the way I would have necessarily wanted it to play out, where you see the lineup without him, and especially without him and Larkin, which is kind of a compound effect, because they finally did give the team some reinforcements at the deadline. I felt like that was an important thing to do, just even as kind of a ceremonial gesture to say, okay, yeah, this year is going to be different than last year. We're going to give you something. I think it did depress them a little bit to not get any help. Falk was obviously a big addition. Then you got Perron back, who I think is obviously a quieter addition, but fitting in nicely to this team, especially with the absences there. But the sad part is we haven't seen the complete team since they acquired those guys.
Yeah, Falk, obviously the price tag he paid was the going rate for defenseman his caliber, and Perron, I think he might end up being a sneaky pickup if they do make the playoffs, just because he brings that added playoff experience with St. Louis, and just knowing how he is in the locker room too, with guys like Kane, even helping Larkin out, kind of shouldering the leadership role in the locker room. I think that off ice aspect alone adds value just to the trade itself. And I mean, you didn't give up much for him to begin with. And on the ice, he can go out there and he can play the top six or in the bottom six. I mean, he can play anywhere in the lineup and make a difference on power play if he needs to. I mean, he's one of those guys that's a multifaceted guy, even at the stage of his career that he's in. And then you look at Falk, I mean, he's already playing almost 21 minutes a game. He's settled in fairly well, very quickly with the team. And I think that's going to even add more, the top four solidified with him, Sherratt, Edmondson, and Sider, as long as, fingers crossed, all four stay healthy. I think that sets up well, not just for this season, but next season too.
Definitely. Yeah, the leadership element is huge, because I do think Larkin was kind of the hub of that. Obviously, they've got Kane and his experience, and then they added Van Riemsdyk, but it all kind of went through Larkin. But now they've got some older voices in the room to help some of those young guys, especially with the influx of young guys that they've brought up this year and have been in the mix from Grand Rapids and from some of the youth, kind of outplaying expectations like Finney and others. But yeah, it's an interesting run. I want to talk more about it here and talk about how you felt like this week went as compared to your preview. So we'll come back with Jordan Orth after the break. Also, Jeff, are people stealing things in the studio? Do we need to notify Scott? I've noticed people are just leaving with things. Do we need to?
I believe they're engineers.
Okay, so yeah, we're okay.
I think it's safe.
This happened before, and I didn't know if we should say anything or if we're just standing by and we're accomplices to this crime. So apparently everything's okay, Scott, if you're listening.
Yeah, yep.
We're trying to protect the studio best we can. So stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM.
Country with a twist. Jethro FM, 1530 AM, WYGR, Wyoming, Grand Rapids, 94.9 FM, Grand Rapids, 99.5 FM, Lowell, and Jethro South, 980 AM, WAKV Otsego, Plainwell, 98.9 FM, Otsego, and 105.1 FM, Kalamazoo. Available worldwide at jethro.fm.
I wanted to talk about this with you, Jordan. Hopefully, Jeff was just updating me that Larkin practiced today, and hopefully, I know he skated the other day, and hopefully he's on his way back because they're obviously going to need him healthy for the stretch run. But one thing that's always interesting to me, no matter how long you have injuries, especially if you have injuries at quote unquote the right time where it's really not hurting your playoff positioning, your rankings in the standings, I do think that there can be good injuries in some cases where guys drop it out, and then that forces other guys to elevate their game and fill in. And I'm wondering if you saw any of that with this Larkin injury, especially when it was compounded by the Kopp injury. I know it hasn't been an extremely long period of time, but I do feel like there's some guys that have gotten a little bit more aggression and a better feel post trade deadline and post break after, okay, we're on the team. We weren't part of the trades. We got refreshed in the Olympic break, and other than Larkin and Raymond and a few of the ones that played in that, and now we're ready to go. And so maybe some of the guys that maybe we're slumping a little bit compared to what some of the expectations could have been, like Casper and some others, I feel like they have a renewed sense of purpose with kind of the reslotting of these guys, and just in general, it feels like this has pumped the guys up, knowing, okay, yeah, we've got to accelerate for this playoffs before the playoffs, and we know we're missing some of our key guys here.
Yeah, you look at Casper. I mean, the points are still kind of MIA a little bit, but you have seen his game pick up. Even before the deadline or any of the injuries. But you look at guys like Kane. I mean, he said today he's looking forward to Larkin coming back. That the team wanted to pick up the play and kind of step it up so they are in the thick of the playoffs. I mean, since the deadline, he's had 9 points. You look at DeBrincat, he's played really well, 11 points since the deadline. So those two guys have obviously stepped up. Siders look really, really good at both ends all season long. He's had 7 points this month too. So you got a few guys that have stepped up. I mean, obviously those are the kind of guys you expect to do it. You really haven't, I don't think, seen the offensive production from guys that are kind of lower in the lineup. Finney's chipped in a little bit. It's kind of nice to see him get rolling again, but it hasn't been a whole lot of your depth players who have done it. I think if you can keep guys like Payne and DeBrincat kind of going on that second line once Larkin does come back, which hopefully is tomorrow, it'll give them that extra little boost, and hopefully you can get guys rolling like Raymond, who's kind of struggled since the deadline. I think you get things on track and everybody back in the lineup. You're going to look at, okay, we've treaded water while our guys were out. Now let's get rolling. Let's get this playoff spot, and let's end this drought.
Exactly. I mean, they do seem to be doing their part, but a lot of these other teams are hot. I mean, like I said, you profiled this week very accurately, I think, and I'm curious what you thought kind of in retrospect. I read the article previewing it, and obviously some very intense competition, playoff style games, teams that were all in the mix themselves, and I feel like they acquitted themselves fairly nicely. You would have loved to have come out with 3 wins. They were close on the last one, but I'm curious what you thought of this week being a pivotal week. All these weeks left are going to be pivotal down the stretch here.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it, they definitely need to get both their special teams going. You play 2 tough teams in Buffalo and Ottawa, who have both been really hot on both ends of the special team spectrum. Buffalo's been one of the hottest teams in the league since middle of December. But if you can kind of get things, again, it really just depends on if you get Larkin back, or maybe even Rasmussen or Nygaard. I mean, you can get guys back in the lineup and get your lineup, your lines, and then your power play and your penalty kill back in check. I think you'll see those numbers go up, and then you play Philadelphia at the end of the week, that's a game you really got to take advantage of the fact that their special teams are really struggling this year. And if you can take that game, get some momentum built into the next week, and get hopefully 3 wins. But if you can get 2 out of 3 games with a win, maybe all 3 with points, you're coming out looking really good and rolling in the next week with a good amount of momentum on both ends of the ice.
This period could have been pretty rough given the 2 injuries at once. I don't know if you heard this, but I feel like they said it on the broadcast a couple times. The timelines seem to be a lot shorter with Larkin and Kopp than we initially thought, because at the beginning they were talking about, oh, well, they're not going to be reevaluated for 2 weeks, but after that, Kopp was back immediately, and now it looks like Larkin, hopefully, like you said, should be back this week here. So that avoided, a potential disaster there, getting those guys back. And then you got to think with the full squad here, they'll be looking pretty strong.
Yeah, I mean, at this point of the season, you look at an 82-game season, everybody's going to be playing through injuries. And, if Larkin was able to play earlier, then obviously, hopefully this week, he would. He's not going to sit in the stands for an injury he knows he could play through. But being able to get him hopefully back sooner than expected, and obviously getting Kopp back and Perron back after they traded for him, it's going to hopefully be a shot in the arm to get things. Like you said, they haven't played bad compared to last year. This time they were 2-5-1 in the month of March. At this point, you're looking at a 3-4-1 record so far. But if you can, like you said, they treaded water, and now it's time. Okay, let's all elevate our game now that we're going to have everybody in the lineup and we're all on track.
That seems to be the key here down the stretch, because you mentioned Raymond, Casper. There's some guys that haven't probably hit the stride like they've wanted to, but hopefully if everybody's slotted in appropriately and kind of part of the rising tide that's lifting all the boats. Because certain guys, it's like, okay, you want everybody else to be drinking out of whatever cup DeBrincat is right now, because he just seems like he can't miss. Everything is super aggressive from him, and I love how he's playing, but I know that's not how hockey works. It's not necessarily baseball-esque in that point. I feel like baseball is more when one bat gets going, it can get all the other bats going. There is some of that in hockey, but guys still have their struggles amid other guys kind of getting hot. It's not necessarily as contagious in hockey from my perspective anyway.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like you said, compared to baseball, just one guy not having kind of going on a cold streak, it's just one of those situations where, again, you got to have a guy step up. It's next man up kind of mentality with hockey. With baseball, I mean, we saw it with the Tigers last year towards the end of the season, where they all kind of seem to forget how to hit at the same time. So fingers crossed that kind of doesn't happen with the Wings over the last couple of weeks of the season, and we can say they're finally back in the playoffs.
What do you think are going to be the keys? I know you mentioned the special teams a little bit, but what do you think the keys are going to be down the stretch here?
I think you look at just staying healthy, not getting any other guys hurt, just getting back in the rhythm of things with a full lineup. In this, Gibson's had a couple of games where he's let a couple soft ones in. If you can keep him on track, I think if he can stay at the level he's played at for the majority of the season, you're going to find yourself in a really good spot for a playoff berth.
I have to say, Gibson's at a higher game count than I thought he would be at this point in the season, when you factor in obviously the injury and the age, and then he was off to the slow start. I wasn't worried about that. I had kind of written that off in the early shows, like, hey, he moved cities, he's playing behind a different defense, different area, he's got to adjust, and so he did that quite nicely. But I am surprised with, one, how healthy he's been. Hopefully that continues, but because he has been hot, they really haven't, it wasn't even 1A and 1B. At first it was like, okay, I think the 1A in this is Talbot at the moment, but that lasted the first few weeks, and then Gibson has been the clear top goalie, but they really haven't given him much of a break.
No, I kind of agree with you. I'm surprised on it, and it's a very welcome surprise because everybody knows kind of how he can be that top tier goalie when he's healthy, and nobody really knew what to expect. Especially he's not old, but I mean he's getting up there, so you don't know at his age. Obviously, we've seen him getting pulled from games, kind of precautionary reasons. And, I mean, Talbot, when he's been called upon, he's looked good too. But, yeah, I mean, it's been a pleasant surprise on his overall play. And, like you said, how many games he's actually been able to sit in there or play in the crease for.
It does give you hope for a potential playoff run, too, because he has been one of the better goalies overall. They've played some tough ones, especially recently, but he's been solid in there. He's been as advertised after the trade here. But we appreciate you joining us here to take us through the season and especially last week and the post deadline era here. But I want to make sure to direct people to where they can find your coverage here.
Yeah, it's just at thehockeywriters.com. And let me see. I don't even remember what my Twitter handle is anymore. I post some stuff on Twitter. It's at Jordan Orth on Twitter, and yeah, that's about it.
I was gonna say, I think you got the one of one. You got your own name, which is tough to get. But no, we appreciate you joining the show, Jordan, and we'll look forward to having you back on here in the future.
Absolutely, thank you for having me.
All right, thanks, Jordan. Talk to you soon. Thanks to Jordan Orth. Appreciate him joining us. Yeah, the hockey's really coming down the stretch here. I'm enjoying this intensity that they're having. You mentioned, Jeff, that they're kind of losing steam to some of the other teams, like teams that aren't even playing, like say the Lions, and they're not really getting a lot of coverage. But these are great games that people are missing here.
They're really good games, and we get to scoreboard watch. I know they're not supposed to, but between Montreal and the New York Islanders schedule the next 10 days and ours, this is a chance. We need to win because the Islanders and Montreal, their schedule right now, it's like what we went through last week. I mean, especially Montreal. It is brutal the next 4 games. We can take advantage. We have to take advantage with not only overtime losses, we need 2 points. Like last week, we got like a couple 1-point games. We have to get the 2 points.
Oh yeah, they've got to be stacking some wins up. I mean, one of the good things about this team this year is that they're not as up and down as last year. It was like they would get once McClellan came. Yeah, they had a couple 7-game win streaks, but they had a 7-game losing streak too. It was like they would equal out with some of that stuff. This year they've been less up and down, but hopefully they can get one of those win streaks going here. But yeah, definitely worth watching down the stretch, especially with the additions and everybody coming up healthy. In addition to the Griffins guys that have been up there and then playing well here, so that'll be a fun stretch run too. But we're going to turn our attention to basketball. Speaking of minor leagues, we're going to focus on the Motor City Cruise and our buddy Chad Bush, who does the commentating for them, because again, kind of like we've been talking about throughout the episode, especially with Chris Brown about the minor leagues, we want to talk to him about Danish Jenkins, who's going to be featured more now for the Pistons and this hot Motor City Cruise team, because they've got to be one of the favorites now in the G League, and there's some interesting players that could factor in for the Pistons down the road. So we'll talk to Chad after the break. Stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. Talk some Pistons and some other things. Jeff just informed me that they're up at the half. They're playing well here. We're kind of at basketball overload, though, I feel like, Jeff, because even though the Pistons haven't played in a couple days, I was like, wait, another game? But I think it's because of all the NCAA games now with the quad box snorting basketball. I don't know what to do with now NBA basketball, but this is an interesting time frame for the Pistons because they're dealing with something similar to what we were talking about with the Red Wings. They're dealing with a Cade Cunningham injury at not necessarily the best part of the season, but not necessarily the worst depending on when he comes back, because this is the concept that I talked about with Jordan, I think is hopefully going to apply for the Pistons as well. He's going out at a time time where he's going to get a lot of rest. And when he comes back, hopefully it will be in time, and when they need him in the playoffs, his body will be rested. I think he'll be ready, might have a couple games of rust to knock off. But you've got guys that really haven't been featured in the rotation much. That's why I wanted to talk to Chad about Danis Jenkins, because Danis came on really strong when Cade was out the first time, and then he kind of faded back into the atmosphere a little bit. He was so far back in the rotation that he didn't even play in one of the games, and now he's back to being featured. And then you have guys like Kevin Herter that are going to benefit from more time. Levert, I think, is another one, getting him out there and more comfortable for a playoff run, because I know he hasn't been the favorite of any of the fans, but he's also a guy that could be a very capable scorer in the playoffs too, because if he gets hot, he could all of a sudden, I mean, I know people are going to kind of probably roll their eyes when they hear this, but he could be in some games their number 2 scorer in the playoffs to Cade if he gets hot like he can. That hasn't happened very often, and he hasn't gotten to his he hasn't gotten enough minutes to do that, but he is a capable scorer. He's 50. He's scored 50 points in a game. I think that's one of the reasons they have him on this team. But yeah, I'm hoping that this is a time where they can develop some of these young guys, some of the guys that haven't played as much, and then everybody's clicking once they get to the playoffs here.
Yeah, and you had a good point with the hockey. Sometimes there's a good injury, and I know it sounds weird, but with the Pistons, like, it's different with the Pistons and Red Wings. The Red Wings are fighting for their lives. The Pistons are just fighting to keep the number 1 seed. So you make a great point. Get these guys some more minutes, maybe get them in a rhythm. To me, I felt like ever since Jenkins has signed that contract, he's been pressing more. It seems sometimes he's trying too hard and doing too much.
Which is funny that that's the case, because you would almost worry about the opposite sometimes, because a guy that did come up the way that he did, that's a big deal. To get from a 2-way contract, being undrafted, bouncing around in college like he did, to getting a big-time signed contract with an NBA team, a good NBA team. So you would almost worry about him taking the foot off the gas, but the way he plays, yeah, I can see it being too much on the gas, and that's not a bad point. It does look like, Jeff, Chad is available. So if we can get him on here, because we'll talk a little bit more Danis with him, because I think he's going to be a pivotal player for this run. And like Jeff was saying, it might be more applicable here for him than anybody else, that he gets to fill in for Cade, he gets to find his footing and doesn't press quite as much as he maybe has been in the last few games, because he is a key part of this team. He does fit in well. He serves an important role, especially after Jaden Ivey getting traded. That was the guy that he ostensibly replaced to a degree, because they didn't feel like they needed him to be that backup guard. But speaking of Danis Jenkins, we've got the guy that was keeping him company for a long time here over in the Motor City. But man, you guys lost Danis, Chad, and I would say you've reloaded. You've got a lot of company over there on the east side of the state, because this team is fun to watch.
They really are, Ryan, and it's kind of shifted from more of a guard-heavy team early on in the year to a forward-heavy team. And really the guy that needs to be the headliner is Isaac Jones. He's a bad man. He's a vicious forward, carries a Bible every day wherever he goes, a gentle giant off the court. But he is a power forward, and he's just learning the game. He just started playing basketball his junior year of high school. And he's a force, man. He's been the leader. He's averaging like 30 points a game his last 7. It's just been crazy. So Tolu Smith, ironically, being out or with the Pistons, has allowed Isaac to go to work. And they two-wayed this kid early in the year. And after they signed him from Sacramento, and he's been the real deal. So yeah, but Danis is coming on, and good to see him progressing with the Pistons. It's been an up and a down. He's shown a little bit of reality too, but yeah, both great stories for the Motor City Cruise this year.
Well, that's one of the conversations we were having, Chad, when we were trying to get you on. You hit on it with Jones because it's happening at that level too, that there can be these injuries or injuries or lack of availability. In this case, Tolu wasn't injured. He was up at the main roster because of some of the injuries there with Isaiah Stewart and others. But the injury creates an opportunity, maybe not for that player that gets injured, but for other players. And then you can take that improvement that player experienced and carry it over to the rest of the season. That's what I'm hoping happens. And Danis kind of gets reset by this Cade injury, filling in for him, gets him back in the groove because, like you said, he has had his ups and downs. Jeff, I thought, made a good point talking about how it seems like Danis is gripping a little bit more now that he's been signed to a contract, which you would almost think it would be the opposite. He's got the security now, and you would worry about, I would think, one of two other scenarios, the main one being complacency if you sign that contract, but it's almost like he's gripping more now, and he's already an all-out effort guy. He doesn't need to put in any more effort. The effort level is fine.
It's a good point. And, look, it's the NBA, and scouting reports get out as well. And he's a pro, too, and he has tendencies, and he has negative tendencies, just like any other pro, and they get exposed at this level. The scouting's a little better, the players are a little better, and eventually they start to notice your weaknesses. So, and he has some, but at the end of the day, the worst case, he's an eighth man on a team that has a chance to go to the NBA Finals. The Crews have done their job, right? And so is this group that's headlined. By the front office has done a fabulous job since they've come in.
Well, this has to be great marketing for the Crews because obviously the Jenkins story was a big one. But, I mean, you look at the rest of this team, and like you said, Jones has gone down there, and he's had some monster games. They make the trade for Drew Peterson. That's really improved things and made them one of the favorites. But it does seem like they have a good culture down there, just like they do at the main roster level. It's an extension of that main roster. And, yeah, there's a lot of players down there that I'd go, okay, if this guy got pulled up, I mean, Jones, like you said, is a two-way player. We've seen basically all the two-way players thus far this year. We've seen Tolu a decent amount. Moore has been up a little bit. Jenkins got converted, and then he added Jones into the mix. But even some of those other players, I was surprised to see them be able to get Drew Peterson via trade because I was surprised he was on a G League lineup because last I knew he was on that championship team, and he's been a force for them in kind of like a hybrid point forward role.
Listen, man, it was grand theft. Okay, getting Drew Peterson was theft. This guy's a winner. They're, pardon my loose records, but they're like 22-5 since they signed Drew Peterson on the 11th of January. He's a winner. He won an NBA title with the Celtics. He was on the G League. He didn't, chip in on the title, but he's a winner everywhere he's been. He's unselfish. He makes plays. He's a passer. He's a scorer. He's been on a torrid pace, and he took over, ironically, for the only all-star for the Crews, Jaden Akins. Akins was struggling. In comes Drew Peterson, and he's a rookie. Jaden Akins has exceeded his expectation. We haven't even talked about him. By the way, he was the only representative for the Crews at the All-Star game. He played that well. So here in comes Peterson. It was almost magician-like timing. And Peterson just said, okay, he's hit the rookie wall. Let me take over. And credit the Crews people that did this, maneuver and this theft.
Speedy Walker, and Max. They did a great job of getting them. Bryce Williams, another guy from the Big Ten, leading the G League in the Eastern Conference in three-point shooting for most of this regular season. We haven't even talked about him. I love his game. There's so many guys. John Ukamadu, who's kind of gotten lost in the whole discussion, thrown on the bench, and then he pops off for 20 and 10 when he wants to. It's just a really deep roster, and it's a fun roster, and there's a lot of guys to talk about. And they're making a playoff run, and they're the number 5 seed right now out of 8, and they're not just fighting to get in, or they're not wanting to get in. They want to get, they want to get themselves a home playoff game.
We've got to take a quick break, but I do want to talk about more of the depth of the roster and a lot of those guys that you mentioned dating back to the All-Star weekend, because I did watch Jaden play, and they also had one other guy that was at All-Star weekend, but he was featured in the dunk contest. So I want to talk about that and that depth to the roster. But we'll come back here with Chad Bush of the Prep. Stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. That he does the play-by-play for. And we were actually just talking in studio here, Chad, about how we're a little disappointed that you guys aren't in town here anymore, because it's a lot of great basketball to watch. And yeah, the depth of this roster is incredible, because you talked about Akins. That was the story that when I saw that kind of develop after we talked last, I thought, okay, we'll have to have Chad back on, and we'll be talking Jaden Akins. And then by the time I got you on, it's not that he's playing bad now. He's going through a little slump compared to what he was doing. But like you said, he's a rookie. He's exceeded expectations. He made the All-Star game. But some of the guys that had featured in at the beginning of the year, like a Jaden Akins, a John Ukamadu, those guys both were heavily featured in the All-Star break. Ukamadu won the dunk contest. And, I mean, he's electric whenever he gets out there on the floor. But they have so much depth now that it's kind of like the Pistons. It's mirroring the Pistons. That's a good problem to have. They've got a lot of guys to throw at you depending on what you have on the other side.
Yeah, no doubt. And Johnny Ukamada out of Roseville High School here in suburban Detroit, and native of Southfield, he's been an interjection of energy. He's like there's things on the stat sheet that stand out, and he's certainly a dunk, but he's instant energy, and he's like a plus-minus guy. And things just start to happen right when he gets on the court, when things are going well for him. And he's a three-point threat. He was last year around 40%. This year, I think he's not quite there, and he's a defensive guy. And then, of course, he adds the excitement level. So, yeah, he's one of those guys that's been relegated to the bench. And, I mean, they've got other guys that have just popped in. And what's amazing is these guys are the equivalent of walk-ons. They were tryout players. John Ukamada tried out. He came off the street and made this team. So that makes the story even sweeter. But this guy, belongs. And so he's gone from just playing in the game and everybody getting happy he gets minutes to being a rotational player to being a starter to being an all-star dunk winner. He's been a great story. And they've had other guys that have contributed. But, yeah, it's a total team effort. And, they've had a lot of folks contribute this year, and they've got their sights set on it. And I do got to say, Jamel McMillan, the coach, tip of the cap to him. He's just got a great temperament. He's got a great mind. He knows how to deal with people. He's a real one, and he's the son of an NBA former player and former head coach and current assistant coach for the Lakers. Of course, Nate McMillan. So he's just got that right temperament. And I think he's a big part of why they went from 2-7 to start the regular season to where they're at now. I think 22 and whatever they are. So yeah, it's been quite the team effort.
Yeah, he definitely deserves a mention. And then all those players that you have, that's what's been interesting, especially with this stretch run, because we talked about Peterson being a bit of a steal and how at first it kind of seemed like he was taking Aiken's spot. Now they're flirting with putting those two guys together, because that's what's crazy about this team is you can kind of slot a lot of them in multiple places, because they're going double big at times with this Jones and Smith combo if Tolu is down. Plus they've got Peterson to be able to play at basically, I mean, he is a forward, but he can handle the ball. He's been handling the ball. But if you make Jaden be able to get off ball a little bit, that's not all bad either, because he did play off ball at State, as a lot of the Spartan fans know, for a decent amount, especially for his last year there.
You're exactly right. That's where he was, in fact, playing exclusively, was off the ball. He never got a real shot at point guard. I mean, Izzo wouldn't play him at point guard. So, yes, you're right. He's somewhat comfortable there. And he's coming back around. So everybody's kind of coming back around. One of the other guys we haven't really mentioned, maybe a couple, Bobby Klinsman, who he's down on assignment, which is kind of better than being a two-way guy and higher expectations than a two-way guy. Bobby's shown flashes of being a pro, being a Piston. He fills up a stat sheet. He can pass. He can defend. He can rebound. He can shoot a three. He can shoot a layup. He can run in transition. He's one of those, like, five-tool guys. He can block a shot. He's like, if you said this is the new world basketball guy, it's Bobby Klinsman. And if he gets his stuff together, he's a pro. He's a Piston. He's a very intriguing one. But there's nights where you just wonder where he's at, and then there's nights you're wondering why he's not playing for the Pistons in their rotation. Chaz Lanier is another one we haven't mentioned. Chaz is a real threat as a scorer. From the three, from the mid, and he can finish, and he can slam. And he is ultra-athletic, and he's a defender. So there's two guys there that we haven't really even touched on that are like Pistons that are playing down with the Crews on the regular. So, it's a deep lineup and a fun lineup and a fun team to watch right now.
Yeah, Klitman's an interesting one, because I know they tried to give him some run at the main roster at the beginning of the season. Didn't seem like a great fit, especially with how everybody else was playing. That's no insult to him. He's a young guy. It was good that he got those reps, but I think going down to the Crews has helped him, because I've been a believer in him for a little while, because like you said, he can do a little bit of everything, and I almost think that can be a detriment, especially when you're young. I even see this with Asar Thompson at the NBA level. He's obviously a high-level player, very high-level defender, could be a first-team all-defense type player even this year. The offense is coming along, but there's times where he's got the ball and he can do so much with it, with his length and his speed, that he gets to a spot on the floor that he's kind of like, well, now what do I do with the ball? I've got so many options. That's kind of how I feel with Klinsman sometimes, when you say you're not sure what's going on with him. I think sometimes he doesn't necessarily know what to do because he's got too many options. I equate this to the mobile quarterback, especially one in college, where you've got a guy that has a good arm, has a lot of options, and is mobile. He's creating now more options for himself because he can run. Is he going to pass on the run? Klinsman has a much better feel for the game than I knew when he got drafted. I saw him handle in both the G League and the Summer League, and I thought, man, this guy actually can lead a break. He can pass. He's got good vision. But when you have all of those things, it takes a little while to get through that decision tree in your head, especially as a young guy, and say, oh, no, if I'm on the break, this is what I should do. Or, hey, I've got to watch this guy on my right. I think he's the faster one. He's going to get past. I'm going to be able to hit him with a bounce pass for a hoop or whatever. But I feel like that's sometimes his problem. I'm putting that in quotes because eventually it's not a problem as long as you're able to troubleshoot that and kind of use the best of your abilities there.
Yeah, that's a great I like that analysis, and I think that's spot on. I do. I think he's can almost handicap you being so good at so many things, and having so many options that you're not quite all the way there. But boy, some nights you can do it all, and you can really see the brilliance. And not to mention, he's a young guy, played 1 year at Wake Forest, and he's away from home. You know, he's also away from home. He's a young guy. He's from Europe. You know, he's adjusting to life in the United States still, and we kind of take that for granted. I think a lot of times, he's in the United States. He's fine. Well, yeah, but you know, it's an adjustment. So, and some guys can handle it a little better than others. Maybe he's still adjusting to that. So, anyhow, I think he's an intriguing one, like Lanier. So it's a fun roster.
I think that's a great point, though, Chad. We talk about that a lot on the show, even with people that are, say, Americans used to living here in the United States. I don't think people give enough credence and credit for the fact that you have to travel around so much at these different jobs that you say, okay, we were talking about this with the Red Wings goalie, John Gibson, when he came over at the beginning of the season, he was a little slow. And I mentioned on the show, like, hey guys, he's moved his family to a different city. He's in a new location. He's got to figure out that location. In addition to figuring out his entire new team, how the defense is going to look in front of him, how the different players play in different scenarios. So you're factoring all that in. That's the same with Bobby, because like you said, he's not only from, you know, a different city. He's from a totally different country. He's a young guy adjusting to all those things that we all had to adjust to at his age. I mean, his brain's not even fully formed yet. That's not an insult. It's just science. Doesn't happen until 25, 26 years old. And then you're toggling between the main roster and the G League, which can make you a little bit unsettled because you're not playing with that same unit all the time. You're leaving one team, and then now they've made some changes and you're back. Okay, now I'm playing with the Pistons again, but the same guys aren't here. Oh, I'm back with the G League, but they acquired Peterson, or certain guys are playing less. So I think you bring up a great point that between the off the court uncertainty and then sometimes on the court uncertainty, it does feel like you're getting on a moving train to a degree. It was the same thing with Jaden Ivey, unfortunately, because he kept getting hurt and it just didn't feel like he was in lockstep with everybody else. Well, when you're not able to walk the same journey, then it's harder to stay in lockstep.
Spot on. Yeah, I'm with you on that. It's a good comparison with Ivey, unfortunately. I'm looking at his bobblehead right now. It pains me that he's not with us, but yeah, man, similar. Bobby's talented. I also want to point out, some other guys. Dawson Garcia, who's on the roster, a guy who's had spotty minutes just because he's been injured quite a bit. This guy's really intriguing. If he sticks around next year or gets some late run, he's a big body that can shoot. He can play defense. He's mobile. I know he hasn't played a ton. And then Olivari. This guy just scores. I know he's a veteran, but Quincy Olivari is another guy in the lineup. And then let's not forget, we haven't even talked about one of the two ways. The other Jones. Our other Jones. Who am I missing?
Wait, are you talking about Wendell Moore?
I'm sorry, Wendell Moore. Wendell Moore. Thank you. Yeah, Wendell's, and they don't know if Wendell's going to be back. So if he does, watch out. But it's a lot of guys to open up and play. So it's been almost like certain things are timed well, so opportunity is available, and a lot of opportunities have been taken advantage of.
Definitely. And I'm with you on Garcia. I thought that was a guy that was poised for a breakout this year, but I don't think it's for any lack of effort or skill. I think it's just lack of opportunity so far. You've got a lot going on. What do you got over there, Jeff?
I want to read you the stat line right now.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. Jenkins in 28 minutes tonight, 20 points, 8 of 14 from the field, 4 of 5 from 3, 5 rebounds, 8 assists, leading the team in minutes tonight.
I did see the 15 points at halftime. So yeah, he knows you're on here, Chad. He's playing up. You knew he was going to be back because I mean, even when his shot did look a little tight, but it's only a matter of time. It's nice that he's getting this time to be able to stretch out a little bit. I think that's part of it. I know he's fine. I know he's you don't have to get ready if you stay ready, but it still is harder to not know your role on the team.
No doubt, and I do want to say this. Jamel McMillan has been very complimentary of the way that Jaden Akins has handled coming off the bench when Drew Peterson came in. And the way he has been as a teammate, he said, has earned a lot of equity with not only the team, but with the organization. So I know that was something that was impressive and something I heard directly from the coach, that there's more here. There's character, and that's something this organization does not overlook any longer.
No, definitely not. Yeah, character's huge. The character, grit, all of that stuff in the Detroit sports market. But Chad, we really appreciate you joining us. We always enjoy when you come on the show. Want to make sure to give the people an opportunity to follow you and what's going on at the Prep as well. So make sure to give people that pertinent information here.
Yeah, people can follow us at the Prep Sports Media on YouTube, the Prep Sports Media, or theprepsports.com for our website. But yeah, a lot of high school games coming up, and Motor City Cruise on Wednesday, and then Friday and Saturday we'll be on FanDuel Sports. And also our high school slate, spring sports coming up. We'll be in the left side of the state as well. Hopefully we can see you guys sometime this spring.
Definitely, that'd be great. Yeah, we'll check in with you here at some point to see what's going on with the high school side of things too after the season. And always appreciate you joining the show.
Thank you. Always a pleasure. Thanks, guys.
All right, thanks, Chad. Talk to you soon. Thanks, Chad Bush. Appreciate him joining here and talking about the Pistons and the Crews and what they got in the pipeline here. But we're going to take a quick break and then come back in studio and finish things up. Stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. But want to thank our sponsors as well: Collectible Insurance Services, Eric Hall Aesthetic and General Dentistry, Calder Financial, Grand Management Group, Rydan Investments, Encore Business Group, Jim Hagelin of JH Realty, Williams Chiropractic, I-Core, and the West Michigan Sports Commission. Thanks for all their support. Want to thank our guests, Chad Bush, Jordan Orth, and Chris Brown. All did a great job. Want to thank Jeff for keeping us on track here. We got a few minutes left with Jeff, which is good. We didn't even talk about what we were going to talk about, but we got the Pistons game going on. He's been tracking that. The Lakers are coming back a little bit, but as he noted, Danis is having a very nice game, which I'm happy about. It's funny how quickly people can kind of fall from grace because he was the big story, and then it was like, oh, well, now he's not playing quite as. I mean, he's still playing pretty well for whatever slot he is on the team.
Yeah, tonight by far his best game since signing that contract. Absolutely.
And I think that's a note that I haven't really heard anywhere else, Jeff, about him getting a little tight, because you could tell, he just his jumper wasn't quite as smooth. There were just a few things about his game.
Or turnovers.
And,
I just thought he was pressing. He was like, I want to prove that I'm worth this money, signing that contract. And I think he was just pressing too much, but it looks like tonight is, it's a go. Lakers come in red hot. They've won 9 in a row. So, it's good. Good to see him having a great game.
And that's the kind of guy you want anyways.
Absolutely.
A guy that presses maybe a little too hard after signing the contract. We see the opposite too often where you're worried about giving that big contract out because, hey, you've earned it, but are you going to keep earning it? Are you going to earn this for the entire length of the contract? Not that his is, a max deal or anything, but that this is a bigger leap for a guy that started as a two-way. It's almost unprecedented because that was one of the big things that I think factored into the trade deadline is that they needed to add another spot. They needed to free up at least one spot for Jenkins. And they did that nicely, I think, and still kept a lot of depth in the G League region here, as we just talked about with Chad. But yeah, he's going to be pivotal down the stretch. I think he provides an element that they don't really have anywhere else. He needs to be that backup ball handler to Cade that can be kind of gritty and come out there and be ready whenever he needs to be. Yep. Where hopefully Cade is still playing, hopefully he's back to playing 30, 35 minutes a game, but you also have to worry about his conditioning a little bit. If he does have a collapsed lung, you got to worry about the fact that he's then missed a few weeks of time and missed some games, and his conditioning level might not be back right away. He can't stay at the same level of conditioning in his condition right now. So he's going to need a little time, not long.
Yeah,
he's
absolutely.
A young guy, but
yeah, and that's key that he's a young guy. But it seems like reading and about these injuries is that it does take time to get back. You can't just come back in and all right, 35, 40 minutes. It's something that he's got to work up to. But again, with us being in the position we're in, we're not the Red Wings where we're fighting like every game's a playoff game. We're fighting for a number one spot, and we got a 5-game lead because we've got a tiebreaker against Boston. I think we'll be all right. Let him take his time and get him back, and then let's go do it. How exciting is this? 4 major teams in Detroit, all really, really good. It's just so much fun. And this is my favorite time of the year right now. It's baseball's kicking up. We've got Pistons that are in it, Lions off season, Red Wings are fighting for their lives. It's great. It's absolutely amazing and so much fun to be a sports fan in the state of Michigan.
Definitely. I don't know that you could really take a snapshot at another time and say, okay, Michigan and Michigan State basketball, we're in basketball season, and then the other 4 major teams. I don't think you could find a better aggregate situation between all 6 of those teams than what you have right now. Sure, yeah, you have championship years maybe in there, but not necessarily one of these could be a championship year. I mean, the Pistons have a chance.
We can't leave out the Frozen Four either.
Yeah.
You have 3 Michigan teams with the number 1 seed. I mean, it's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, it's fun to cover, and one of the things that Jeff and I were talking about before the show is we like that we actually enjoy covering the sports and don't necessarily get as negative maybe as some of our counterparts here.
Yeah, and it's almost impossible to be negative with the way these teams are playing. Just they're winning. You just haven't experienced that. All 4 major sports in Michigan, they're all winning.
It's hard to stay. It's hard to get negative and stay factual. Let's put it that way, because you can have your opinions about maybe how some things should be improved, but it's hard to really paint the picture accurately if you're being that negative with the situation how it currently is on all 4 teams. If the worst team, quote unquote, is the Lions team that still went over 500, and you're negative about them, even though they're having a decent offseason and poised well, as long as the injuries work out for next season, if that's your worst team, I think you're setting up pretty good.
Absolutely.
But yeah, appreciate you joining us.
Always fun. Always have a great time.
And we'll look forward to having you back. We're looking forward to the Jethro lineup as a whole. We got the Sports Project on Wednesday, 7 to 9, prime time. We've got Shane Graham's Extra Points with me. Sorry, Jeff isn't in next week, but he'll be in again whenever I need a fill-in. Jeff will be in there because he did a great job with Shane, but we'll have Shane back in studio here and be talking with him. And then we'll have the Polka Pops on Saturday, followed by the All Request Saturday night here with none other than Jeff Isaac.
Brought the turntable in last week. We had a blast. Yeah,
nice.
Fun.
Yeah, be sure to tune into that and the rest of the lineup, and be sure to tune into us next week from 7 to 9. But until then, stay informed and stay vigilant.
Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh is brought to you by
Collectible Insurance Services, Eric Hall Aesthetic and General Dentistry, Calder Financial, Grand Management Group, Rydan Investments, Encore Business Group, Jim Hegland of JH Realty, Williams Chiropractic, I-Core, the West Michigan Sports Commission.
Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh.
Stay informed and stay vigilant.